Did you watch any of the other ones?
No, I haven't had a chance, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
But
Thanks.
sorry. Yeah.
Welcome to God Hockey Episode 5. Today, I sat down with Chris Joswiak from Brian's. He's one of my good friends in the industry, and we got to talk a bit about his life in the game and what it's like to work with pro goalies on a day-to-day basis. We covered a lot of ground, and he got to show us a little bit of a sneak peek at the new Gnetik V line. Please remember to like and subscribe so you'll be notified when new videos are available. And for now, here's Episode 5 with Chris Joswiak from Brian's. So today is God Hockey episode number 5, and today I've got Chris Joswiak from Brian's. This is a special episode for me. Brian's is a very important brand, has been for me for quite a while. Chris, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Excited pleasure's mine, believe me.
Equipment with you. So
yeah. Before we get too deep into the equipment, let's just go over a little bit about you. Starting out in hockey, starting out as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I was fascinated with the goalie position from an early age. Started skating, at age 5, and instantly started gravitating towards the goalie gear. I loved even the goalie skates at the time. I remember the Bauers. I forget what they had like the weird segmented foam background or back end piece on the tendon guard, and it was just that white cowling, and it was just different than the players. So even when I was skating out at 5 or 6, I wanted to wear the goalie skates, and fell in love with the goalie gear, and got net probably by mini mites or whatever, age 7, and just fell in love with the position.
Never looked back.
Yeah. So and the funny thing is, like, looking back, it's like, I always loved the sport and the game, but more importantly, the gear. I mean, I sat around in first grade, second grade, just drawing pictures of goalie pads and sketching out designs and all that stuff. So it's kind of funny because I still do that stuff today. And
yeah,
that's probably like the biggest reminiscing part I have of my job is like, I literally did this stuff, all my time growing up.
Takes
and
you right back to your childhood.
And like literally I still sit around with, printer paper and some pencils, and right now we're already starting to work on for next year. So we're getting the sketchbooks out again right now, and that's kind of how Rio and I and Joe and we use some secondary designers, like Rudd, that we all kind of just collaborate and execute a design at the end. But it's a lot of going back and forth, a lot of sketches with everyone, and see what the best idea that we come up with. So
yeah,
but yeah, love the goalie gear. But yeah, I played my amateur hockey in Michigan, where I was born, the Detroit area. So a lot of people are familiar with the Bell Tires, the Honey Bakes, all that. I actually spent a lot of my time, being on a travel team that we kicked everyone's asses. We were, double A, but we won the international silver sticks. We, won all the tournaments, won national championships. And a lot of the guys, we weren't even triple A, but a lot of guys ended up playing pro. And, a couple of my best friends from the team, they played in the NHL for the Penguins and the Stars.
So you're a real goalie, actually.
Yeah, it was decent. My biggest downfall, I guess I was always really fast, but I was always kind of a runt. I'm only 5'10", fully grown now. But I was always one of the smaller goalies. I was always paired with a big goalie on my team. So there'd be one monster goalie that was a little sluggish, but he took up the whole net.
Right.
And I was the little energetic guy out there. So yes, I was always a decent goalie, but yeah, I'd say that, size plays such an important role,
It certainly can.
And then really, I found a newfound passion for the sport. And when I played at Oakland University, it was, ACHA club hockey. But, at Oakland, they had such a strong team. They already won a national championship. And I walked on as a freshman, and the senior goalie actually quit in the first month. He was just fed up with things. I ended up being the starting goalie as a freshman. We lost in overtime in the national championship. Ooh. And then basically ever since, I got a couple national championship, rings after that. And the club ranks. We won one with Oakland, and then it's kind of unique. I transferred over to Davenport University, and probably the biggest thing from transferring was meeting Joe Messina, who I know you're familiar with.
Yep.
So he's, with Bandits Goalie School, he's always been a goalie coach at Davenport, and that's kind of,
And 101 goalie products.
Yeah, Mass Marvel, all that stuff. So they have a passion for the game, him and Stan, and Stan's going through his cancer treatments and all that right now. But
shout out to Stan.
They have a very successful goalie school. You see all the goalies that are doing really well in the NHL right now. Bandits and Stan and Joe played an integral part of their career. I mean, Jack Campbell had a great year this year with Toronto, as you know. He's went to Bandits school for many years. Same thing that Ned from Hurricanes, he had a great rookie season. He's, at Bandits every summer, and the list goes on. So, a lot of goalies are really flourishing from, being under their belt and education. So,
and was Joe your coach?
Yeah, he was a goalie coach at Davenport, and him and I really clicked early on. I think, we had a lot of the same passions. He knew I loved the hockey equipment side of things and all that. And we're both kind of like, I was going to school for marketing, and we just kind of clicked. We were like, even though he was my coach, he was also my buddy. And, right as I graduated, the first thing he did was reach out and say, hey, I found you, a great position with Brian's. They're looking for a kid to travel around, and they don't really have anyone young working for the company. And I was wearing Brian's. I had that custom Davenport set with the Panther hat on it. So it worked out really well, where I graduated, and 2 weeks later I met Graham up for an interview at a coffee shop at a Starbucks. And, I've been with the company ever since. So I think it's been I think this is my 12th year now, or 11th year. So
got to be around there. Getting up there.
I remember meeting you the first summer, so over at Just Hockey. So it's been a long time. It's crazy how time goes by so quick, so but yeah, really, if it wasn't for transferring and doing all that stuff, I wouldn't be here.
When you think of it, I mean, it's ACHA hockey, so it's below D3. But it still is very good hockey. And even if you're not a guy who makes it farther or goes on to something else, it's still very competitive. It allows you to be as competitive as you can be in an environment. And then, there is a championship. There are teammates. There is something to play for.
I mean, it was very competitive. I mean, a lot of our guys came from NCAA D1 or D3 teams where, a lot of the guys on our team they end up having kids or something like that. There was always a backstory behind every guy on the team, and a lot of guys were, real promising players that could have played the NHL. Just something happened along the way, and somehow Davenport or Oakland found these guys. And, maybe it wasn't their plan for their hockey career, but, we left with some memories and
absolutely.
So
I think there's always something to be said for looking at yourself, looking at your life and saying, okay, I'm not going to be this. And in this case, it's NHL superstar hockey player. So I'm not going to be that, but I still want to be a part of hockey in some way, or I still want to allow hockey to take me to the next part of my life. And I think,
absolutely. And I remember, sometimes, I don't know if you ever met Eric Rupert, but he was a goalie at Davenport before me, and he was there when I was when I transferred over. It was his senior year, and I just remember he's a real smart guy, and he was a great goalie, real big, and he should have been. I thought he was at the caliber that he could have played. He shouldn't have belonged at Davenport either, but he was kind of one of the first guys to go over there with a bunch of Kingsville players and all these junior guys that just somehow got ringed into starting that program over there. But he's like, I asked him, I go, do you have any regrets or anything like that? And he goes, no, absolutely not. He's like, I could be a backup or a third stringer at, a lot of D1 teams, but I want to have all these games played. I want to have all these experiences.
Maybe if we look now at a little bit of your Brian's career. So you handle the pros, you do a lot of travel, you spend a lot of time on your phone, I bet, with all of these guys. What's your average day like? Either off season, getting ready to go to training camp, or during the season. How often are you talking to most of these guys, and what are
Yeah, I
some of
mean,
the kind
it
of
just
things that you
yeah.
discuss?
Yeah, it really varies. I guess my first 10 years with Brian's was totally different than the last year and a half, obviously, with
Yeah.
COVID and all that. Just like the teams are, it's real strict with the locker rooms and all this stuff, this past year and,
Hmm.
and all that. So that's been different. But it all really varies. I mean, I always say kind of in a lot of these situations, a lot of these guys almost they're psychologists, because they all have agents,
Yep.
but their agents are more there for financial responsibilities, endorsements and all that.
Hmm.
And kind of outside of their team, a lot of these guys like Kalak, Yarrow, I've been with, for my whole time as a pro rep. He
Yep.
was my first goalie I had that he was already in Brian's, and I kept him ever since. And he's a guy that we're buddies. He sends me text, Chris, what kind of car should I get? And I show him a couple options, and he values my opinion on that. He knows I like cars and all that. Same thing. Like when he was going to be a free agent, or when there's trade talks, Chris, what team do you think I should go to? And
Mm.
stuff that you'd be amazed that he's asking.
Stay in Boston.
Yeah, questions that he would say, that you'd think he'd be asking his agent or his family or his best friends. So,
Right.
I value those moments. And I got some goalies that, when they're having rough patches, it's like talking them off the ledge or injuries and all that. So I think I'm just a voice outside the locker room. And, it's kind of in the industry and all that they value my opinion on a lot of stuff, and especially the goalie equipment. But yeah, it's just and I guess my role as a pro rep is a lot different than a lot of other people. So like my buddy Jonah for CCM, he's got 12 to 13 guys on a team, as a
Right.
player rep, and he is pretty particular to that team, and he has a set group of teams that he deals with, and that's different for me because I'm the only pro rep for Brian's and the only
Hmm.
college rep. And a lot of the countries outside of North America, we don't have distributors in, and I deal with KHL goalies and so on and so forth. So my position's a little bit different than I would say a regular NHL or AHL pro rep, where my position, I'm just all over. I got goalies like Magnus Hellberg and the KHL, and I got all these guys that formerly played in North America that are going overseas, so I deal with them still. So it's a lot of texting. Right now we're doing a lot of the college business. It was kind of delayed this year, so a
Hmm.
lot of the orders that I would normally be doing in May and June are now July and August, and we're trying to fit them in and all that. But yeah, it's a lot of texting. For me, it's also different because a lot of the designs I help with. So, I don't think, many pro reps are, very, inclined on Photoshop or, Corel Draw or any
Right.
Illustrator
It's just not
program.
their purview.
But and they don't need to. But with us, we do a lot of the custom graphics. So
Yeah.
guys like DiPietro and and all these guys, like a lot of those Georgiev, I'll design those, or Rio and I. So I spend a lot of time on the doing the custom stuff. So. And a lot of guys now, it's like they put it in my hands and let me run with it, and then I give them a couple options, and they go from there. And then some of the other ones like Laner, if he wants something intricate, I'll outsource it, and that's
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
with a couple of these guys like Chance and Brennan, these graphic designers, they've really helped us do something that's truly unique and different from what Brian's normally does. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, really, it's this past year, it's been a lot of texting, but on a normal year, when the guys are in town, I'll go down to, I'm in the Detroit area. So, I'll go down to the Little Caesars Arena, LCA, where the Wings play. I'll go to the pregame skate, check in the guys' gear, take a gander at how it looks. And then usually, the night before, we would already have done dinner when they got in town, hit one of the nice steakhouses or something, grab dinner, maybe a glass of wine, and then they'll wind down, and then I'll see them in the morning. And sometimes I'll go to the game after, But other than that, like, traveling has been probably the biggest difference, this past year, because right now, we would have been just finishing up the PHATS convention, which is
Right.
the Pro Hockey Athletic Trainers Convention. So, every year you go down there, you see all the equipment managers, the NHL, AHL, East Coast, NCAA, OHL, all that stuff. So this year is still virtual. They didn't, because I know you guys are pretty strict in Canada and stuff still. So a lot of those
Well,
guys
yeah, I mean, obviously the border's not open, and
yeah, so that was all virtual, so we didn't have too much participation in that this year. But yeah, so it's just kind of a different time right now when you ask, what my daily duties are. But we have a lot going on, and then we're still figuring out next year's stuff now, and it's always constantly working on the next thing and all that. So it's they keep me busy, and I got 2 kids at home now, and all that. So always busy, just a little less travel than normal, but definitely a lot of conversations with the guys, especially this time of year, getting them all set and start
Mhm.
working on NHL pro guys, next month, so they're ready for training camp. So
Yeah. Well, so you gotta find out. There's going to be guys who are signing different places. There's guys trading. You don't know. One of your guys might get picked in the expansion draft or something like that, and then next thing you know, you trying to figure out color palettes for the Kraken jerseys.
yep.
So if you look at it from the standpoint of like when you started and moving into now to this season and onward, what are some of the things that goalies maybe didn't ask you as much for in terms of like a spec or a feature that they didn't have previously that they're all kind of clamoring for now? And maybe what's something that you used to get asked for a lot that maybe guys are starting to get away from? Do you have any of those types of
I
things?
would say the biggest thing really is just they keep it simple now. I think when I first started with Brian's, and at the time the 0G was the model that was out at the time. It
Mm-hmm.
was like every little thing was a change. It was like adjust the strap here, drop this down here, move this notch there, and change this brake angle to this. It was like the custom sheets were like pages. I was Word
Yeah.
documents that were 3 pages long, and you'd sit with a goalie and it'd be change this, change that, and it'd be truly custom tailored to them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was like all this stuff for what? And I don't know if that's necessarily, the how that's changed, or maybe we just through the years really dialed the gear in where there's not much to change. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I guess from the 0G, if I had to wear it right now, I'd make a lot of changes too. But bottom line is like, I guess now it's just keep it simple, stupid, like
Yeah.
everything is when I send in an order sheet, like I have all kinds of stores and guys like you reach out like, hey, what does this guy do? And hey, what are the changes on this, pro return pad? It's like, dude, it's stock pad, we don't make
Yeah.
any changes. There's very little mods that we really do anymore.
Right.
It's pretty much like what you see at the retail level is what the pro guys actually wear. And I
Yeah.
think that's where, I remember like 5 years ago, different brands, and they're like, oh, like this is nothing like what we have in stores. And I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
and they like trash almost the retail pad. And I'm like, dude, like what we have in stores is the same exact pad that, Locke's wearing and this and that,
Yeah.
and we really try to keep it, and that's where we spend a lot of our R&D is with guys like, Lehner and Shesterkin and Halak and, all these guys that like, they're passionate about their gear. They're passionate about Brian. So, they're kind of
Right.
our first test dummies in the summer, and we really see what they want to do on stuff. And that's why there are really no changes on it. They kind of dictate, they play designer almost. Sparks is a prime example. Garrett, he's very vocal and very passionate. I could see him, down the road, being somewhere in the hockey industry, maybe
Yeah.
for Bruins, who
Maybe. Yeah.
knows. But and he's got ideas right now, so I listen to those guys, spend time with them in the summer, a lot of these goalie camps, the GGSU stuff, and just hanging out with the guys. And that's kind of where we get our initial ideas, and
Right.
where we just, dial in the pad and the gloves and figure out what needs to be changed. So
Yeah.
we listen to a lot of that stuff. So like, when you look at the Gnetik 1 to now we're going into the Gnetik 5, which I'm sure you'll ask about later. it's just small refinements. It's all those little changes guys have asked for over the last, 4 or 5 years, and just making it a refined and what we kind of imagine is the perfect version of that pad, So, really not many changes. I think guys, the biggest thing with a lot of goalies is just, last couple of years, say 5 or 6 years ago when they did the LDS rule fitting changes on, the proportions of the goalie pad, there was so much work to figure out how to maximize the goal pad size. And
Mm-hmm.
guys were trying to make pads bigger because, their pads got cut down 2 inches and that. And that's really changed too. Like now I got guys like Halak. He used to joke around how the Slovakian models would get their kneecaps broken, just so when they grew back, they'd get a half-inch taller. And he's like, oh, maybe I should research that so I can get a bigger pad. And I don't think he was joking, but now he actually reduced his pad by a half-inch this past year.
Mm-hmm.
So trends like that, like sizing and fitting and all that have really changed. I think even at retail, I'm sure at retail stores, you order pads a little bit smaller. You're not seeing so many 35+2s
Yeah.
as you would, and now you're seeing more 34+1s and so forth. So
I do like to stay away from going too big. And even when a customer comes in, ultimately they can order whatever they want. It's their money. But what happens is they're not happy with it at the end of the day, then that's a pad that they bought from me. So that may end up reflecting that way. I think that's a good point you made about how close most of the gear now is to stock. And I know that when I see customers who will come in, they're looking for a custom pad and they want to know extra little features or extra little tweaks and things that some pro wears. And a lot of times I have to even tell them, look, you don't know why that goalie gets that. You don't know why that helps that goalie. And you might not realize how that actually is hurting that goalie, but he just does it because he thinks it works. And it's all fine and good to get it. And I brought this up on a previous episode too. The times when I've ordered like really custom gear, and I used to get pretty detailed on it. And the two pads that I customized the most were the pads that I liked the least.
Oh, absolutely.
They ended up not working out for me at all. I changed all kinds of things. I had like specific measurements from here to here and here to there, and change side rolls and make this flat.
I could say for certainty, if I had pro guys or even retail customers or myself or college goalies, almost any goalie that wasn't happy with their gear, it was over customized.
Yeah.
And anytime that we keep it almost stock, it's almost 100% happiness. Of course, not every gear is for every player, but definitely looking back, I can name the sets in my head, and they were over customized. And the biggest thing is goalies trying, especially pro goalies, like they want to wear, say, Brian's because they like the quality, or they love like the aesthetic of them or something, or they just something is drawing them towards our brand, but they have worn the same brand for 10 years. So say they want to make our pad feel like a Lefebvre pad, or a glove feel like a 5500 or something like that. And those are the ones that it's just harder. It's
never works, right?
And those are the ones that we don't keep. If I just probably made them a stock set, I'd be like, oh, I like this better, and that's what I started doing. And you have much more success than cloning things and all that stuff. So I would say the biggest thing is just keeping it simple. But I'm glad that over the last 6 years, the Velcro, like the Smart Strap system has really taken off, because that was the big thing that we really took a gamble on. No one else really had a mainstream
on Sub-Zero
on their straps, and that was Rio's idea. And I'll never forget, one day he made this pad with no leather straps or nylon webbing buckles. And he's like, take this out and try it. It was a summer, in the summer. And I was playing in the summer league with a lot of pro guys called the East Side Elite. My buddy runs it. But I went out there and played against Jeff Lurg, and I'll never forget, like, I was just unreal. And I didn't have high hopes. I was worried the pad was going to fall off, and I had like my best skate in like a year, And I I wrote this huge long thing about the gear to, all Brian's management the next day, gave him this raving report how we're really onto something, and the pad was so light and wasn't fighting my body and all this. And it was crazy. Like for the first 6 months, like a little brand like Brian's, and you don't have a huge marketing campaign behind it. You don't have all the NHL guys like Carey Price wearing it. People really had a hard time being convinced that they could really ditch the straps, especially when you're spending that much money, So I think that's a really nice trend that you look at all the goalies now, you look at that finals, Carey Price and Vasilevsky, no leather straps really, you know what I mean? Like it's all,
it's a rarity now.
And and we're the ones that really created that. And you could instantly, and it was funny because at the time I remember we were doing, vendor days at, we're at, I was out in Edmonton, and I was with Mike Mole at the time, and I was with the, CCM, and they were Reebok at the time still. But he was saying, the guys are laughing at your pads and how it has no strapping on there, and that it's not going to work. And then, I would talk to, the Warrior guys. At the time, it wasn't their current guys. It was Eric Marvin. He's like, all these guys are dogging on your stuff, and that's not going to work. And then they all adapted it. They all adopted the system, and they have their own takes on it, and they have their own versions on it. It's not like they've knocked it off, but
no, for sure.
At one time, it was they thought we were crazy for doing the no.
Absolutely. Well, you can go back if you want. You could even go back to I'm going to say around 2002. Or 2003, and the Brian's Demon pad came out. I don't know if that was one that you ever even wore, but it was basically one of the first pads ever that had an integrated calf wedge on it. And it was out before the V2 had the balance stabilizer. And that was something, they gave it a name and it got a lot of attention, but it had already been on a Brian's pad for about a season or even a half a season, let's say. It was already there. It was a great innovation that they had done. I think other companies had similar stuff to it, but not in the same way that Brian's had done it. So there's lots of these little small things that turn into big things that you may not even realize as you go, and then they just all of a sudden they're part of what a goalie pad is. So that's definitely a nod to being willing to just take a chance on that. So that's really something.
And I give credit to Chris Mason because he was actually the first goalie to take a chance on it too at that Sub-Zero.
Yeah, so, that's right.
He was in a big time superstar goalie, but I sent him that pad and he fell in love with it too, just like I did. And he was
that Nashville or Winnipeg?
It was actually Winnipeg.
Okay.
So he ended up going back to Nashville. Yeah, he went to Nashville afterwards, but it was the first season of Winnipeg. And
okay, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And all that, and it worked out perfect because we were already doing the hero colors of the stock sets. We're going to be with the baby blue and navy, and that wasn't even planned. So that worked out well. But I got to give him credit. He
took a chance.
Took a chance. So.
He took a chance. So let me ask you something, because again, we touched a little bit on it already, with Brian's being so well known for custom graphics, for allowing the pros and your customer base to really customize how the pad looks as opposed to just how it feels. So how do you balance off wanting to show off what the pad looks like when a customer end user walks into a store and instantly recognizes that's the pad, that's the Leonard pad, that's the Halak pad. So how do you balance off letting everybody know with that big advertisement of an NHL goalie that this is our new pad, and also showcasing the custom graphics that a lot of these guys use?
Yeah, it's actually a tough balance. I mean, that's probably one of the hardest things I have to balance is, being actually, I mean, you kind of made it sound like we're a big brand, but being a smaller brand.
You're a small, big brand.
And not having, say 50% of the NHL.
Right.
you know, it's hard because you want to unveil the new gear. First of all, you have to get the guy to transition into the new line, which we've always been pretty good with, you know, like guys like Ron Dell and, you know, all these guys like Eddie Lack was always receptive to it, would always wear whatever the new stuff was. They're like, hey, this is your new stuff. You say it's the best, I'm going to wear it, you know? And, but then, you know, if you get them in that model gear, you have to have that healthy balance where the retailers want to push the stock gear because it's what's on themselves. And then you have these pro guys that want something unique to them because they're goalies.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what we're known for. So it's a healthy balance. You know, you have to, you know, Graham always kind of praised me on that, was like, hey, you got a couple guys in the stock, you got a couple guys in the custom, you know, it's good for both ends. So it's trying to find guys and trying to convince them to go towards one thing. You know, usually like the graphics will kind of tie in perfectly with the team or something like that. So
yeah. Winter Classic.
Yeah. Or, you know, I'll say, hey, use this for a couple months, then you can get your custom design or something like that. So it is trying to get that healthy mix of showing off what we can do at custom. Because really, I truly believe, you know, Rio Roy, you know, who works for us, Ritz, you know,
shout out to Rio.
Yeah. He doesn't get enough credit in this industry, you know, honestly. And I know, you know,
yep, absolutely.
Being able to manage a building and production and doing all our graphic design stuff, running our catalogs, creating a new line. I mean, obviously, like with all this stuff, he has a helping hand. I help, Joe helps, you know, with Aaron, you know, all the people there, Glenn, even the girls, you know everyone. But where these other designers are like famous or known and you know their names, you know, I don't know many people out there other than diehard Brian's people that know who Rio is, you know. But you hear all these other names, and I'm not going to knock on them by any means, but you hear Smith, you hear Lefebvre, you hear Mike Vaughn, you almost all these other brands, you have this like famous, you know, designer behind it, you know, JRZ, all these. And you don't really hear the story behind Rio or how influential or how talented he is, you know. But really, I mean, to be able to manage all that stuff and then handle all the custom graphics, all the cutting for that stuff. You know, there's a reason why these other brands don't do custom, you know, cut and sew designs, and why they're all going towards the digital print is because it's not easy to manage. It's time consuming. You know, you got to lay it out.
There's a lot of work involved.
It's a lot of work, a lot of man hours. And that's really goes on the designer. You know, you could have all these laser cut systems and everything else. It's still going to be a ton of work, you know? So for him to do all that stuff and still help me with the pro and make sure the guys, you know, their gears size, you know, going to fit the fitting restrictions and sizing restrictions and just everything he does. I mean, he's really, and then with all the innovations, like, again, you know, I chime in and, you know, there's a lot of things I could say, you know, like the BOA was, you know, my idea and all that on the gloves. But, you know, overall, like, you know, this guy doesn't get credit, you know, for all the things he's contributed.
I think you're absolutely right. I may not have ever really thought of it that way until you just mentioned it, but you're right. You're very right. He does carry a lot of weight, and he does, obviously he produces, and maybe because the company's not called Rio's, maybe that's part of the reason why not as many people have that direct connection.
It doesn't have his name on the side of the pad, you know, or anything.
That's right.
Like that.
That's right.
It's just that Brian's wasn't a marketing company, and they never marketed around him. But we marketed as a goalies only. I mean, you look at our website, you look at anything, it's goalies only, right?
That was great.
4 goalies, 5 goalies, and if you look at, you know, our factory floor, you know, there's some older women sewing and all that, but almost all the men there are goalies and wear the gear. You know, Joe, I guess,
Swiss.
He's a forward, but even Swiss and all these guys, they're all goalies. I remember before I worked for the company, I went to their website one time, and the About Us page was like them in their goalie gear on the ice doing skate saves and stuff, and that just kind of stuck with me, you know, and it's kind of stayed true all along. You know, Benny was a goalie when he was with us, and all that, and we had Tremblay and all these guys that were all goalies and have a passion for it. And that's kind of what I think differentiates Brian's from the pack of brands is, you know, it is all goalies. I think Warrior would probably be the next closest thing. I know they got a lot of goalies there, and you know, Kirk and all those guys, and Pete. They do a good job, and they have a real strong passion for it too.
Another Michigan guy.
Yeah, Vaughn, they got Ev and Mike and all those guys too. So, but yeah, I mean, really, you have to have a passion for it. I used to go around to goalie school and say, some of these brands, all their gear is made in the Orient, and the people at the factory don't even know if they're making the new Michael Jordan shoe or, a catching glove. They don't know the difference. They don't know what they're building. And that's why you get a lot of inconsistencies, I think, is, if you don't know how a catch glove is supposed to, fit and feel like, I have the new Gnetik here, like you don't know how to lace this and people don't really understand like what Swiss does and the talent it takes to get everything to fit and feel like it's supposed to and be able to close the right way. And, you're mashing a bunch of materials together and plopping them on top of each other. It has to feel a certain way. And I think whenever I put on competitors' gloves in the stores, especially when they're made overseas, you put on one glove, and I know because you're at a store all day.
Yep.
You put on one glove, it feels maybe great. You put on the next one that's the same exact model, same brand, same everything, and it feels completely different.
Sometimes there is a little bit of that inconsistency.
And I know, and trust me, I know in the last 10 years it's greatly improved. I used to say that at like P-Hats convention to some Frenchies, and they'll get so offended, and they'll start screaming at me. But I know it has improved. I'm kind of going off more in the past, but everyone's really put a lot of time into R&D and really trying to make the quality control better, whether it's made in Canada or, China or whatever. But, that's the nice thing with Brian's is like, it's just almost a mom and pop shop up in Kingsville.
It is very much, very small town.
Yeah, and I guess that's probably how we keep a lot of those people, because talents like Rio, I think that, if you ever wanted to leave Kingsville and, leave that kind of style, you could probably get bigger bucks somewhere else, You see what some of these guys are getting paid.
All right, we'll keep it down.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll keep it with him, and, he'll be a lifelong Brian's guy and retire as a Brian's guy. So
yeah, let's hope so.
Knowing that you have that stability there, you know what I mean? So.
Mm-hmm. A good goalie in his own right too. I've played against him a few times in
and great
local
guy.
tournament.
Honestly, in this hockey industry, by far, probably Graham and him are my two best friends. That I've met through this hockey industry, along with Joe Messina. But that's different.
Yeah, exactly.
Brian's are really good people. So I'm fortunate to work for the company, and that's why I've been there for so long. So
yeah. So one thing that you mentioned a little bit ago that I want to bring back to is introducing BOA to the products, to the glove line. And I never in a million years would have thought that I would have seen something like that in a glove, just because, again, this could even go back to the strapping, that most hockey is very conservative as a sport. And the equipment tends to be very conservative and not change a great deal. But so where do those ideas come from? Like, how did you think that would work in a glove?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you real quick. I have a glove here, so if anyone's watching, you don't know what we're talking about. BOA, we put on almost all their gloves now. It comes stock on the pro level gloves, so that's where you can click this dial, ratchet it in, as you can see. Can get really tight. We also have a dial up here that really brings your hand around the brake. Mm-hmm. And then you're secure. You can't come undone. I mean, my biggest pet peeve with the nylon webbings back in the day on the 0Gs and the focuses, you kept having to crank it all game long. Yeah. This will never lose its tightness.
Especially if you like it tight. If you do really like your glove really locked on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, all you do is lift up and it pops undone, but it'll never come undone during gameplay. We were so worried about durability issues early on, and we literally had like 2 warranty issues a year. And they're crazy freak accidents,
right.
Stick.
It's reliable.
That came down, and then the player's head crashed into this, and stuff like that. So the durability was really good. But yeah, ideas like that, it's more just funneling ideas and taking things in. And when you hear things, actually the BOA thing kind of rose from. We had a former rep that also worked for Easton, Joe Janes, and he was based out of Denver, and BOA is based out of Denver.
Okay.
And he's like, I got this crazy idea. They're doing these ski boots and snowboard boots.
Well, that's because that's where it comes from.
Yeah. And he goes, somehow you guys should apply this to the gear. I don't know how, but you should do it. So I started thinking about it, and we've talked about it in product meetings. And at the time, Ben Ward was still with us, and
Yep.
nothing against Ben. I mean, he designed some of the best catch gloves ever out there.
Oh yeah.
You know, but it was towards the end of his, tenure at Brian's, and he just didn't see it as an application. He thought there'd be too many durability issues. He kind of compared it to like the ratchet straps like on a figure skate or some of those hockey skates that never really made it, and he thought it'd be gimmicky. So we shelved that idea, and then a year and a half later, I think he left to do his own thing, and he had a upholstery business and all that. He's really great at refurbishing things. If you ever have a couch or something that needs to be fixed,
So he's an artist.
Yeah, no, he's good at what he does. And then he opened up his own little pro shop and all that.
Yep.
But so anyways, when he left, it was really solely on Rio and I. And that's where I really took much more involvement in the design aspect. And I knew we had to really, take it to the next level with the first optics and all that. And we brought that idea back, and I said, we got to reach out to these guys. We got to see how we can put it. I go, I think it could really work well in the glove. I don't know so much the pad or as a blocker, but the glove, like I hate, just like I told you, I hated tightening the gloves, and they started putting in lacrosse equipment and all that. So I knew we had to reach out to these guys and figure out how it could, apply to the whole line. And we really try to force it on the pad and the knee pad. But ultimately, the wires and just how the pad functions and how the body moves, you got to take all that into account. And it just didn't work out well. There was things that we could have done to make it go through the whole line, but we said, screw it,
Well, anything that's going to get hit by a puck, you want to keep it off there anyway, or anything. It's because it's like buried inside the glove.
It doesn't come undone, and sometimes you see like a goalie pad, if it doesn't come undone, you're really fighting it, so. But yeah, I mean, it can be applied to the knee pad and stuff, but it's just, again, we steer clear of it. On the blocker, the first year on the first optic, it was kind of an afterthought, and I don't really like how it incorporated or how the rest of the blocker worked with itself. Okay. But we really figured that out on the next year. But on the glove, it was a home run. Now I think 95% of goalies that order Brian's get the BOA. And it just works out really well. You can dial it in, and it's amazing.
Anyone still get the Manny Legacy leather wrist strap?
Maybe 5 a season, but Darling used to get his old leather buckle in there. A few goalies did, but you don't need to now.
No, absolutely.
It adds weight. It's harder to get undone, harder to add, harder to do. The BOA just solves all those issues. And whether you have a big hand, small hand, it is better if you like a tighter glove, but it works well still if you wear it loose. And, it just gets your hands so secure over that break. You have full control on how well the Brian's gloves already catch and close. It works out really nicely. Yeah. And I truly, truly believe we have the best gloves on the market. Now, are they for everyone? If you wore a 90-degree break your whole life, do I think it's the glove for you? No, but the Gnetik glove in my mind is the very best glove out there and ever created. And I'm very biased, but just the break angle, how
that's allowed,
how everything goes into the pocket, how big the double T is. You have the BOA, it's all custom Canadian crafted. It's just a perfect glove for me. And that's kind of what got me in Brian's gear originally. Is I was wearing all Reebok stuff at the time and at Oakland, and I started being around all those Bandits guys, and they all wore Brian's, Jack Campbell at the time, and Brian Hogan and Bakashwa and all those guys. And I'm like, I was struggling to catch with the Reebok glove. I was having a lot of pop outs. The pocket was a little bit smaller, and I went to a Brian's Thief with a double T and 8-lace pocket.
That's my favorite ever catcher.
I felt like I was cheating out there. Honestly, like everything was like, I didn't even know where the puck was half the time. It was in the pocket,
Yeah.
And I fell in love with that glove. And then shortly after, I went full gear, and I've never worn anything ever since. And that was probably, 13 years ago now, 14 years ago. So, I love this stuff. And again, I'm biased, and I think every rep loves their stuff the best.
Sure.
But and every brand has, great products. They have great chest protectors, great, anything, great sticks, great skates. And I just think the glove is the one thing, I could never wear a different brand, and I love our pads. I love the engineered foam cores. That's another, thing that Graham and Rio and those guys created right before I got there, to really make the pad a lot lighter and more durable. And, every brand pretty much, mimic that afterwards too, so, but the foams and the quality, and there's just so much what makes Brian's unique and what makes them stand out. And yeah, we don't have a million guys in the NHL. We don't have the marketing dollars to pay all these guys. And, that's probably one of the biggest struggles of my job is, everyone wants to get paid. All
getting a guy or keeping a guy.
Yeah. Oh, it's the biggest thing. And, we're fortunate right now. We got a couple guys, like I believe in the world, and Igor Shesterkin and Robin Lehner. And I think they're some of the top 2 goalies in the NHL. So, I'm fortunate right now. We got them locked in, and I really believe in them. And I think that their careers are just starting to take off. And, you watch Igor out there, and it's like, and the same thing. Like I knew the same thing with Vasilevsky. He was wearing our gear when he started, in North America. And, it's just the last couple of weeks I've been reminiscing on that a little bit because, you see him win 2 cups now. And I told people, 7 years ago, that this is going to be the best goalie.
This guy's special.
And he's going to win Stanley Cups, and it's just a matter of time. And unfortunately, he just, there's bigger marketing dollars out there. And, it's just at one time we lost him.
Guys switch.
You can, there's nothing, I always take it personal as a rep. I guess not many people, when they see a goalie switch, they're like, oh, that's the rep's fault, but that's how the rep feels, But with him, like we had a great relationship, and ultimately he actually switched out of our gear to CCM, and he really wanted to be like Ben Bishop, which was his, Ben was the starter at the time, and he almost ordered identical gear to Ben and almost same graphics, which is really kind of different because, you'd think that Andre wanted to be a trailblazer, but when he wore our gear, he always was, really impressed with Ray Emery's gear. So if you ever look, his gear was pretty similar to Ray Emery's in terms of design, and he really thought Ray was
similar shape.
The style was kind of, but it was more the graphics. Like he actually wore the Razor graphics for a while, for the AHL and all that. So before he went into the Bolt stuff and all that, but he really liked Razor. He thought he was a cool goalie, I think, so
he was. R.I.P. Ray Emery.
Yeah. So I think Ray kind of got Andre in the gear just from Andre watching Emery out there and TV, so, but yeah, like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and all that. But no, definitely like Shesterkin, I think he's, highly touted.
He looks great.
Yeah. And same thing. Like he's
both guys in New York.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But, Igor's been in our gear for like 8 years now, 9 years. I was just on Twitter one time, this is like, 2012. And I saw this goalie playing in Russia juniors in our gear. And I reached out to him on Twitter. I'm like, hey, like, I'm the pro rep. I'll take care of you. Anything you ever need, let me know. And so he hasn't known much English until this year, but he always used like Google Translate and all that. So sometimes there's a language barrier, but those are kind of the relationships that kind of spark kind of differently than you would normally have.
And you both speak the language of goaltending.
Exactly. So,
So look, we've already gone quite a ways through your life in and out of hockey and with Brian's, and we haven't barely even looked at the gear. Do you want to maybe show us what's peeking over your shoulder there? And
I guess the last couple of days, I know Brad, one of our reps, was at Bandits goalie school, so there's a couple teasers of the Gnetik Vs, the Gnetik V, and I know you've seen them. Obviously we went to the stores and all that, so. It's starting to come out, and we'll unveil a couple more pictures of the full sets, and I've been kind of storing away some teasers and all that stuff, so we'll start releasing that stuff. So it's no hidden story, but finally the Gnetik V will be coming out. Last year we kind of took a pause. Usually we traditionally are different than every other brand and come out in October ahead of, like, basically at the time that the NHL season comes out. Our gear is launched, and you can basically wear what the NHL guys have, at the same time as them, instead of, all these other brands. You wait the whole following spring and their season's over and you're finally allowed to purchase it, and then, you got to wait a custom wait time and all that. So it's almost a year.
You get it a couple weeks after them. We fortunately for me at Just Hockey, being one of your bigger dealers, we get to do, some guys will order custom, and we can get customs for guys before Christmas. when
Yep.
we're
It's a
lucky.
gift.
So
Yeah.
that's
So
always
yeah.
exciting.
So it's a great line. It's something that a lot of people for the longest time are like, when are you coming out with a new pad? And it was just tough because obviously, like, I hate to go down the whole COVID thing, but in Ontario, we had to shut down the plant, quite a few times, not because we had infections, just, Ontario was so strict, and
Yeah.
we're working with a limited staff, and it's just a challenge to try to create something new and then create the buzz. And you have to have the retailers on board, and they say, hey, like, don't
We were all
bring out
closed too.
right now. Yeah, don't bring anything new in, then we can't, so it was kind of a more boring year for me in terms of that, because like getting the new gear in the guys' hands and all that wasn't really a thing. So we've spent a lot of time on that Gnetik V, and it's just, again, like I brought it up earlier, just the refinements and making it more perfect every single time. Like, you look at the Optic 1 to the Optic 2, and it's like worlds above where it was, and it was a great Optic 1,
Yeah.
But you look at the Gnetik 1, you look at the glove, and you look at the Gnetik 5, it's like, man, just, it's amazing. It's just closes so well, feels so well in your hand. Same thing, like the pad, just how it rotates and how everything is secured, and how everything works together, and nothing's fighting itself, and all the little details. Even, sorry for the Velcro noise right by the speaker, but
it's going to be great for the audio version.
The richness of everything, and just how everything looks. Just spent a lot of time on making sure everything looks complete and beautiful, but also perform really well. So it's a great full lineup. I mean, even the blocker is amazing, but we've changed a lot of things. I won't go crazy into all the details because we haven't really launched a lot of the
just tease it a little.
But a lot of new materials that we've really worked on. New features. So the pad just really performs well. I know it's hard to get on here, but this is my sample set for the summer. This is my second set of them. We've made quite a few changes since the first one. I guess I could have brought that one in too, but just the level of richness and quality, and then just how this pad performs for your modern day goaltender. Works for butterfly goalies, works for hybrid goalies. It's just an all around well built pad that it's not too stiff, not too soft. Really just stays flush to the ice. You got no gaps. You feel really secure down in the butterfly, because I guess that's a big thing too. You asked earlier, like, so many goalies spend so much time on their knees now, and down in the butterfly and in the VH and all that. You want the pad to really cover that ice and have maximum coverage. And I know all these brands have their own marketing gimmicks and say this looks bigger and that, but really, I mean, I think when you look at a Brian's pad out there, it's laying flat, and it's got that big presence, and really just maximum coverage, and make sure that you don't have pucks slipping under, or the pad's not over or under rotating. So just a lot of work on really just focusing even on the inner gusset. Like, we've had the Primo material for quite a while.
Yep.
But how everything's inlaid. I know a lot of brands are spending a lot of time on just how everything's set, and how even with your biggest knee pads, this area is not, the knee block's not going to protrude out and cause any inconsistencies. So everything's just spent a lot of time on making sure it's all perfect.
Can I ask you about the shape?
Yeah.
So
sure.
just that, from that break at the knee, how it really has a nice tilt back, fairly straight at the thigh. That's the profile. That's what we're going to be looking at.
It'd be a little more rigid, upwards of, from the knee break up than previous models, just because we have that carbon in there and a few other things. So, but really, like, even if you look at the Optic pad, on the Optic, we have 3 different cores: the Fly, the Flex, and the Max.
Yep.
The Max is definitely the most popular. And then same thing with the Gnetik, single break at the knee, and then, a little bit straighter, a little more straight here and angled. And then a nice, pretty soft, but, giving boot, but still, pretty rigid.
Good return. Good return on the boot.
So, that shape is definitely the most popular for our guys, but, you can easily, add an internal break here and bring that in a bit.
Of course.
Give it more of an S curve. But that's another thing I think over the last 10 years, people put so much focus on modifying that. And now it's like, the stock way, like you put that on, it's going to feel great. You're going to close everything up, as long as you have decent hips and stuff, you're not going to have any issues, so. But yeah, same thing, the glove, like really working on just the shape and making sure it's really wide open, but just close. We've invested money on bringing more ovens in and doubling the bake time and really making sure this thing's game ready out of the box and consistent on every single glove.
Yeah.
Huge double T pocket. It's got the infamous
always the eyes.
Yeah, I gotta have the eyes, but fully redesigned backhand, just nothing fights itself, just really works really well. Messed with the internals a bit, obviously a different,
the opening in the basket look big. It looks like a big opening.
I haven't even taken I just took it out of the box for the first time, so that's all different, you know what I mean? So yeah, really nice glove. I mean, like I said, I think we definitely make some of the nicest stuff out there. And then on the blockers, we really changed a lot of things too. Just
the most exciting piece of equipment in a goalie bag.
Yeah, but blockers are something that probably with the pro guys have always been the most finicky. Like Craig Anderson, it was always like the blocker and a couple other guys. So I spent a lot of time like really working on blockers with guys. So it is more important than most people give credit to, but changed a lot of the patterns and how things are cut. And just overall, like I said, there's new materials in here. How the pucks react to the blocker will be a lot different. The balance and the weight on the blocker will be a lot different. But we spend a lot of time aesthetically too. It's like making sure it looks great. People are spending a ton of money on this stuff. The sides and everything is never an afterthought. Everything is very rich and detailed. Same thing. How we've done the bow the last couple of seasons and how this year's over and everything works awesome. So we're really happy with that. There's a lot of stuff you can kind of manipulate and adjust as well. But yeah, the blocker by no means is a game changer, but at the same time, works out really well and completes the set.
If a blocker sucks, it.
Yeah.
If it's just there and hanging off your arm and spinning around on you when a puck hits it, that's definitely so. But sometimes it gets a little forgotten.
And then on the graphics, we wanted to have something that had that Gnetik vibe to it, has the darts, kind of those almost fake knee rolls through it, but very rich. I mean, we want to capitalize on really having a lot of sew lines too, because you see all that digital stuff out there now, from Bauer, CCM, and you lose all that sew quality. And when you look up close and you see all those stitch lines and everything's sewn perfect, up on TV, you wouldn't notice all that stuff on a player's gear. But when you're in person, you see, this metal mesh that's sewn throughout the face of the pad now and all the little rich details. It really adds to the richness. And when you're paying, upwards of, over $2,000 on a set of pads, you want to feel like you're sitting in a Ferrari. Like, you look at, exotic cars, and I just show a lot of pictures of, stitching on Lamborghinis or something like that. And you can kind of see like the quality and craftsmanship that every stitch kind of takes, and how it feels luxurious. And that's where we don't want the pad to look like a street hockey pad. We want it to feel like a Rolls Royce of goalie pads, So we never cheapen out with stuff. And that's probably the biggest thing that, when you compare us to other brands, we're not out there to save a dollar, a nickel or anything. And
right.
And really that's what these other brands do. And I've had every company come up to me and they're like, I don't know how you guys build that stuff and make any money on it, because the level of richness, even, people don't understand, doing these athlete logos versus having a screened on logo, like the amount of money that this thing, and then we put on the leather behind it, whatever color you want, so it matches your team or whatever else, the amount of time and everything that takes versus just, putting on a screened logo and the amount of money just in that alone, people can't fathom, so, but we want it to look rich, we understand people are paying their hard-earned money for this stuff. We want it to last, and we want it to look good and have the pride, of wearing it. We've thought about, doing digital, and we were actually going to be the first ones, and that.
I remember I saw some
the Tiger stuff, and Graham Graham was really ahead of the curve on that stuff. But we looked at it and we're like, this isn't Brian's.
That's
We're
right.
cut and sew, we're tailor made, and it's custom. In and out, and just you need that level of richness, or it's not a Brian's pad.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's probably the key, and the thing that separates Brian's kind of from all the other companies is they have that devotion, and when you look at certain things and you go, that's so Brian's, and you look at things on other companies and you might even say, all right, well, I mean, it's not like it's Brian's, so like, why, what are you expecting almost,
Yeah.
and that I think really is the key. Is Brian's really, more than anybody else, really separates himself as an individual in the business, like you said, not a big company, but a small big company relative. And I think that's one of the most enduring qualities that most of the customers have, and certainly it sounds like with your pros that you deal with on your day-to-day basis too. So I think that's really the key, and maybe that's the best way to wrap it up. I know I think we went a little bit over. I might have to cut this down a little bit. We blew through a lot, man. I'm so glad I got to have you on today. It took us an extra week or so to get this done, but I'm glad you were able to come on. I'm glad you were able to show us a little bit about the stuff and just let everybody know a little bit about the insides and the things that go into designing the gear and putting it into the hands of the guys that you see on TV, and a little bit about your process. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate being on. And if you ever need a sequel, you know where to find me. So.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to Chris and Brian's for helping make this happen. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll let you know when more videos are available. We'll see you next time on God Hockey.